Happy New Year's, gents, and God fortstanding, as we say in Sweden.
Fortsättning.
Yeah, Alex is better at that than I am. As we say in Sweden, what are your thoughts on the recent interview with the Ark dev stating that Nintendo Switch 2 port of Ark Survival Ascended is only doable with UE 5.7 and that they may need to use frame generation to achieve 30 FPS? Do you think that the combination of UE 5.7 and FSR, parenthetically FSR, frame gen, will bring Nanite and Lumen to more Switch 2 titles in the future? Is it possible that we may see a Switch-only version of DLSS frame gen? Now,
Wow.
this is a tricky interview. This is quite a contentious interview. Because basically the developers are saying that UE 5.7 has brought them a big increase. I think it's like a 30 or 40% increase in terms of frame rate over the prior version of UE that they were running with their game. They mentioned wanting to bring their game to Switch 2. Obviously, that helps facilitate that effort. But they've also mentioned wanting to bring along its signature system. So your Lumen, your Nanite. I think they said VSM might be dropped. That's perhaps something they could do for a Switch 2 port. But they wanted to bring over its essential systems, which is fair enough. Obviously, it's a UE5 game. But in order to do so, they were mentioning that they were not actually hitting a stable 30 FPS, even with all those optimizations and presumably some aggressive DRS behavior and other optimizations. They were only getting the game to about 20 FPS. So they said, perhaps we could do frame gen to 30 FPS, which would obviously imply a base frame rate of 15 FPS. Again, presuming it's a 2x frame gen. Maybe they are contemplating
Oh, wow.
3x or 4x frame generation, or perhaps even 6x frame generation at this point. Who knows? But I guess there are a couple questions here. I think the first question is this at all advisable, and would you think that this is even something that a developer should consider in the most extreme scenario? Could there be a situation where frame jetting to 30 FPS is reasonable for a modern game in the year of our Lord 2026, or indeed 2027, or whenever this port happens to arrive? Okay. And then the second question is, exactly what would you do on Switch 2 with this? Because Switch 2 is Ampere based, so you'd presume the library for DLSS frame generation wouldn't work on it because it's been, it works on Ada, obviously it works on Blackwell, not really written for Ampere. So would you use FSR frame generation? This user has kind of a couple questions there. So what's your response to that, Alex?
Well, I think this interview is really weird in general. Reading it over,
Bizarre.
I was a little mystified by some answers and some explanations. So it is. Good interview though. Great interview, and the person conducting the interview was really great. So that's wonderful. But I don't think it's ever advisable to bring up a game running sub 30 up to 30 using frame gen, because it implicitly implies that, or even explicitly requires that the game run at 15 FPS internally.
Right.
And that would be absolutely atrocious from an input latency level. That would be completely unplayable input latency. Right. And it would also be visually probably extremely poor, other than like straight movements sideways and forward.
Right.
But that's not how we play games. 3D viewport, whatever. Yeah. So no, it just doesn't make any sense to me, and it's a little bit weird that they would even say that they would consider it. And also, yeah, there was some implication there that I think that they were asking NVIDIA and Nintendo whether or not DLSS FG would work on Switch 2.
Kind of a weird attitude from a game developer, basically publicly pleading that a system holder and a prominent hardware vendor make some accommodation for you in your game so you can possibly abuse frame generation.
Yeah, I don't think they'd want people to be playing that. I don't think NVIDIA would say we should allow you to use it to get up to 30 FPS. And I don't think at the moment there's a version of frame gen running on them. And I also wouldn't expect it to be the case, because then it would open up the fact that you should easily be able to run FG, a version of DLSS FG on Ampere, and I don't think NVIDIA has their interest, even though I think that would be great for a consumer perspective. Right. I don't think that's realistic that NVIDIA would do it, considering I've asked them multiple times in the past, like when I talked to Brian Catanzaro, I was like, why can't we run this on Ampere?
Right.
And he gave an answer.
And it doesn't require the optical flow hardware.
It doesn't require it anymore, so if they did do it, it would be FSR, I think, or just something even more simplistic, because we've seen LSFG, lossless scaling FG, and that's cheaper than FSR, and it's less effective, obviously, which I also wouldn't want to see running. This shouldn't be done.
Right. It's Frankenstein's monster. We've created a monster with frame generation. It reminds me of the famous warning the horrible warning that Alex saw when he booted up the Monster Hunter Wilds benchmark for the first time. Please use frame generation, Capcom pleaded, and Alex declined their invitation, and to his detriment, because obviously he was cursed with very poor performance in that game.
Not good enough.
Yeah. But in this case, I think it would be even more glaring because, I mean, 30 FPS frame generation, you got to give me a break with that one. And I thought the tone of this interview was very interesting. I mean, I'm certain. I guess I should caveat that with, of course, I mean, it's a great thing when developers are open and honest, especially about the development process, especially on a game that is in development, a port that might not even go forward. Who knows what will happen with it? I think that's cool. But I also, I mean, I could never really contemplate frame jetting to 30 FPS. Frame jetting to 60 FPS from 30 FPS is also a pretty dicey
It's
proposition.
also a huge stretch. Like, you probably shouldn't do that either.
Exactly.
Almost 90% of the time, you should never do that. So
Exactly. So I think this is just getting off on the wrong foot. I hope they reconsider, maybe even stripping out some of those more fundamental systems. Who knows? I know they did some of that for Series S. Perhaps they could consider doing that for Switch too.